about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening, hello, and welcome to our latest live stream. I'm joined this evening by Sarah, who is over there. I finally got the hang of pointing in the right direction, and Craig is over there. Nice to see you both. How are you both doing?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent stuff. We've got a range of activities to go through this evening on quantitative methods, or methods that produce quantitative data. And they might produce other types of data as well, but particularly that we're looking at the quantitative data and some ideas around that. As we go through the activities, they are ones that you can join in with. So if you are watching this live, and there's quite a few of you doing so, you can get onto the live chat window and pop in some answers to some of these questions. Don't need to write very much. Don't need to worry if you maybe haven't got the right answer. That's part of the idea. Some of them are deliberately challenging, tricky. Just have a go. See how you get on. If you're watching this later, obviously you can't join in with the live chat window, but you can maybe pause the video for a little bit and have a bit of a longer think about some of these activities. Shall we get going straight away, guys?
Let's do it.
Let's go for it.
Fab. Okay, here we go.
So we are starting off with a little look at sampling methods. So when we're thinking about quantitative methods, they might be quite large samples, but the sampling method itself is still going to be important. So we're going to start off with a few multiple choice questions. This means you just need to put A, B, C, or D in the chat window. And the first question is, which of the following could be a limitation of volunteer sampling? So testing your knowledge here of sampling methods. Is it A, It may produce a biased sample of overly eager or specific types of participants. Or is it B, too expensive? Is it C, only suitable for research on criminal behaviour? Or D, requires a use of complex statistical analysis? What do we think? Give you a minute for a bit of thinking time.
I have faith in you. I think you can do this one, guys. Go on. Pop in your letter. Which one do you reckon?
Quite a nice one to start with. And you might think about volunteer sampling within education, but you might also think more broadly about social research. Okay, let's reveal the answer. What have we got, Duncan? It was A. So if you've got people volunteering, you may kind of inadvertently produce a biased sample because the people that volunteer are going to be kind of eager, or it might be a specific type of participant who puts themselves forwards. And that is going to have an impact on the representativeness of your study. Again, showing us why sampling methods are so important. Let's have a look at the second question then. Now, this one is about random sampling. So which of the following best describes random sampling? Is it A, each member of the target population has an equal chance of being selected? Is it B, selecting participants on who is most available at the time? C, selecting participants based on specific characteristics? Or D, choosing them based on the researcher's personal judgment? What do you think? Random sampling. It's often referred to as kind of pulling names out of a hat sometimes.
Well, I feel that's giving it away now, Sarah. I was going to say,
It's a bit of a hint there.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a couple we could rule out straight away, couldn't we? I think because random doesn't suggest researcher using their personal judgment or
Yep.
or
And
gave
specific
characteristics.
Probably,
Yeah.
if you know your sampling methods, that will be hinting at other
Yeah,
methods.
absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
if you didn't know the answer, if you didn't know what random sampling was, you might think it might just be picking whoever you can find, like what we actually call like an opportunities sample. Right? It might be like but that isn't genuinely random, is it? So we actually know it is A again. Are they all going to be A?
Are they all going to be A? Let's see. That's one strategy to go for, isn't it? Next one. Which sampling method involves selecting every nth person from the sampling frame? So is that opportunity? Is it snowball? Is it systematic? Or is it volunteer? And again, you can use process of elimination here.
What does it mean by the nth?
What does it mean by the nth? So we mean it could be insert any number of your choice here. So it could be that you pick every sixth person from the list. So imagine you might be choosing students from a list in a school. If you've kind of got consent to, and you're through the gatekeepers, and you're able to research any of those students, you might go with every 10th, every 20th person from your sampling frame. You may have already sorted that into all of just the girls in that school because maybe you're researching girls' identities, but you then would go through systematically and you would take the nth person.
I think you might have given another bit. I think you might have given.
I might have literally just used it.
Nice clue there.
If I was playing just a minute, I'd be in trouble there.
Let's get to do it systematically.
And that's a great way of remembering it, isn't it? If you're systematically going through, every sixth person, every 12th person. So there's nothing kind of, the first two we looked at were more kind of random, or what was the first one we looked at? It was
volunteer.
Yeah. So they're kind of coming to you. You're waiting, but systematic, you're kind of using something a little bit more mathematical, and that ideally would give you a nice representative sample. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Why is snowball sampling often used in research on hard-to-reach populations? Now, I actually use snowball sampling in my own research, so I'm quite a fan of this method. But why might we do it in that particular situation where we've got a hard to reach group of participants? Is it because it ensures a highly representative sample? Is it because it allows researchers to quickly gather large samples? Is it because it relies on participants recommending others, which could improve access? Or is it because it's the most ethical sampling method available? What do you think? Give you a minute to have a think about that. And this might give you a clue as to how you might develop a paragraph on this if you were talking about snowball sampling as a possible strategy. Shall we have a look at the correct answer, Duncan? It is C. So if you didn't know what snowball sampling was, it is about participants recommending others. If you are finding it really hard to reach your participants, with this method, you've only got to tap into one participant initially, and then they will recommend others, which does make access easier, particularly if it's a very niche, something specific you need about those participants or a difficult to reach group, maybe a group who've been through something. I'm thinking about domestic violence as one that comes up as quite a kind of sensitive topic that could be hard to reach. Snowball sampling. And of course, it will bring with it disadvantages as well. But if we're talking about access to participants, then it is something you could recommend as a way around that. Right, next question. Okay, this is our last multiple choice question before we move on to another activity. So why is sampling important for effective sociological research? Is it because it aims to ensure a representative group of participants, which increases generalizability? Is it B, it ensures that researchers can collect data from an entire population? Is it C, it eliminates all forms of bias in research? Or is it D, it guarantees that every individual's opinion is included in the study? I'll give you a bit of thinking time, so there's quite a mix of possible responses there. Why might it be important? There's a bit of analysis for you where you can start to develop the importance of having a good sampling frame. Okay, shall we have a look at the correct answer? It's another one of those A's. So it aims to ensure, there's a lot in this sentence actually, if you're thinking about writing this. It aims to ensure a representative group, and obviously the sampling method you choose is to make sure that you are getting the most representative group based on the topic and maybe the method that you're using. And that then increases the generalizability. So if you're looking at making claims and wanting to generalize them to wider populations, your sampling method is going to be key to creating effective research that can do that. Right, well done, everyone. We are going to delve into a 3-2-1 now. And this is going to focus particularly on ideas of positivist and quantitative research. So we're asking you to come up with 3 aspects that positivists would prioritize when doing research, 2 example studies which have used quantitative data, and that could be several different research methods, so have a think there, and then 1 evaluative criticism of the idea that social research should be underpinned by a scientific approach. So that idea that social research should always be very scientific, criticise that. And you've got 2 minutes to answer all of those and generate all of those retrieval responses there.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Feel free to put individual answers in the chat. You can just say 3, 2, or 1 for which one you're answering.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, right. So this could be a good chance to press pause if you're watching on catch up or replay and you want to have a bit more time to complete this. But we're going to have a look at some of our suggested responses. So let's start with 3 aspects that positivist researchers would prioritize when conducting their research. So we said reliability. That standardization, that replicability, and then you could have used the word standardization as well. So if you're thinking about questionnaires or interviews having the same questions, this kind of pre-decided set of questions, so it's standardized so that every participant will have the same experience. And then generalizability, because of course, if you want to be able to make those claims, then it needs to be a generalizable set of data, which might link back to sampling again. Okay, so, and if you were going to do that list for interpretivists, of course, it would look very different. And then we asked you for a couple of examples of studies which have used quantitative data. Now, we've gone for 2 here that use kind of official statistics, but you could equally have used examples where questionnaires are used, where very structured interviews are used. But we've looked at Waddington et al., which is a really nice study that you may come across in crime, where they used official statistics of stop and searching that was going on by the police and linking that to ethnicity. And their use of official statistics then enabled them to kind of look further into that and to identify patterns. So sometimes that quantitative data is a real springboard for the further research project. And Chubb and Moe, who you will know from education as new right thinkers, when you look at marketization, and they in America did a study, it was called Consumer Choice, and they actually triangulated the findings from parental surveys, and they looked at that in conjunction with student attainment data, and they used that to demonstrate that they felt everybody wanted the marketization of the education system.
Just on Waddington et al. As well as using the official statistics, they used another method that produced quantitative data. So it's always nice to think about other methods, because we don't tend to think of observations producing quantitative data, but they used a very structured observation of basically identifying who the available population was, who was out and about on the streets at the particular times when stop and searches tend to happen, and basically counted people and tried to make judgments about what ethnicity they were, etc., from their counting. So that was another set of quantitative data produced by a method that we perhaps don't always associate with producing quantitative data. So that's quite useful, which they then used in conjunction with the official statistics. So, yeah.
That's lovely, isn't it? It's quite important to remember that with interviews and observations, it can be very structured or it can be more unstructured. So it's almost like a spectrum of positivism to interpretivism. Right, let's have a look at the final. So the evaluation challenge that we gave you was to criticise the idea that social research should be approached in a scientific way. And you may have said something along the lines of human behaviour isn't like chemical reactions. Humans have free will, they have agency. For it to be authentic, we can't really try to measure people in the way that we might measure, in a science lab. And also this idea that interpreting meaning cannot always be done with overly scientific tools. And of course, that criticism comes from a very interpretivist perspective. And I think it's over to Craig, who's going to talk about using examples of research in your essays.
It is. Thank you, Sarah. One of the things that we were looking at quantitative data today, and the potential is that on papers 1 and 3, you could get a 10-mark question or a 20-mark essay on paper 3, sorry, not paper 4, I'm scaring everyone now, paper 3 on quantitative methods or different types of research methods that you could get. And one of the really useful ways to show kind of those skills of analysis in there is to actually be able to apply examples of research. This will add a little bit more depth to your response. Now, because these are on paper 1 and paper 3, sometimes students will just focus on education for paper 1 and just on for crime on paper 3. But you can actually use on those questions that are, say, outline and explain two disadvantages of using official statistics, for example. You can use research from anywhere across the course, and it's really kind of handy when you're going through your course to actually identify some of the research methods that are used, particularly when you've got a piece of research. Now, for methods in context questions, right, you don't need to do this, okay? It's not necessary to get into the top level using that piece of research. There's a little bit of a top tip for you. You don't have to think, I don't know, I don't have an example of this research method, or I'm panicking, I'm not going to get into the top band. You can still do it without, okay? If you do use a piece of research, a specific piece of research, it should match up to the topic and the method that is being investigated. So, for example, if there was a question asking you about the impacts of labeling on field experiments, then what you would do is you might think, oh, well, we've got Rosenthal and Jacobson, that was labeling in a field experiment. You wouldn't apply other ideas to it, okay, because then you could be going off and answering a completely different question. So in our next couple of activities, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at pieces of research that have used quantitative methods. And the first one we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of a Chilli quiz. Now, this one is particularly difficult this week, particularly the hot question, I would say. I'd be surprised if anybody gets the hot question. The mild and the spicy you may get. And let's look at these. These are all types of experiments that we're going to look at, and we want you to identify who has conducted these experiments. So let's have a look at our questions. Okay, so mild, conducted experiment in Pygmalion in the classroom. May have just given that one away. Spicy, conducted the experiment into worker efficiency at the Hawthorne Electricity Company. And question 3, a natural experiment into the presence of police on the streets. So we're going to give you 30 seconds. Is it on a Chilli quiz? 60 seconds?
I think so. I think these are particularly challenging. Let's have a go.
Let's see. Can we come up with who has identified which?
Got your bass guitar this week, Sarah? Bongos, Craig?
I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm slightly out of time. Sorry.
That number 3 is a tough one. I like that.
Number 3, I would be surprised if anybody gets this one, because this is something sort of like I dug out. I can put the link to the piece of research in the chat later on, but it is a very difficult one. I think the hot question. So, have we got any answers? Who conducted the experiment Pygmalion in the classroom? Give it away a little bit. It was a field experiment into teacher expectations of pupils. And just to say, right, some people will sort of like say, oh, I thought field experiments were interpretivist. They're not, because they produce quantitative data. We are manipulating a variable and measuring it, and you're getting quantitative data. No responses? That one was one I gave away a few moments ago. That was Rosenthal and Jacobson looked at the impacts of teacher labelling on pupils' achievement, and what they found is that those who were identified, they manipulated the teacher's opinion of the student by sort of like suggesting to the teacher that these children would be spurters, and they would have a growth in their academic achievement over the course of the year. And when they measured them at the end, I think about 40% of those pupils had improved because of the way that teachers interacted with them. The second one, often one that you might think, oh, it's an observation, but actually they manipulated different variables in there, including the lighting in the factory. And it's where we get this term, the Hawthorne effect, from, was actually conducted by Elton Mayo in his time and motion studies, and links into concepts like scientific management. So if you're doing work, poverty and welfare, or even stratification, you may have come across this topic. You may have come across it in your research methods. The hot one, and this is the one that is very I think is very difficult for anybody to get. It was actually the Newark Foot Patrol experiment, which was conducted by the police institution and was then cited in broken windows. What they did is they took 3 different trial settings in New Jersey, in the USA. And what they did was they had police patrols on foot, police patrols in pairs, and patrols in cars, and to see sort of like what the impact on crime would be. And then Wilson and Kellings used this to then go on and develop broken windows thesis. It was conducted in the late 1970s, early 1980s. So it's a very difficult one. So we've got some pieces of evidence there. Now we're going to look at how we might apply those. Okay, how we might put it in terms of our analysis, how we might give us our answers a little bit more depth. And what I would say is, particularly with the 10-mark questions, using an example is a really good way to get into that top band, that 8 to 10 band on the mark scheme if you do this consistently. So we're going to have a question here, and it might be something like outline and explain advantages of using official statistics, or it might be an essay, evaluate the strengths and limitations of using advantages and disadvantages of using official statistics. So our students started out here by saying one advantage of using official statistics is their reliability. A very good point, and it's true. And their final point is it can be compared from one year to the next, providing an insight into sociological trends. That's very good. It's kind of a developed point, but we're going to take it a little bit further by going through the stepping stones. We're going to use a piece of research here to actually illustrate how official statistics are reliable. So if we reveal our second line here, Duncan, please. So because they are repeated at frequent intervals using the same or similar measures, they would be more reliable. Now we're going to use an example. Now, if you can think of an example from anywhere on the specification where we measure something at regular intervals and it helps us to get a trend. So can you think of any form of official statistics that we use on a regular basis that we measure and help us to develop trends? Any of the topic areas.
I can think of some.
Go on, Duncan, give me an example.
I was thinking maybe the census data or
Census data.
or exam results.
Census data is a really good example. I have gone with exam results. So if you reveal number 3, an example of this is educational data, which is compiled from annual examinations. And then if we move on to number 4, see how I develop it. So for example, exams such as GCSEs and A-levels take place each year and allow researchers to measure educational performance. We can compare this from one year to the next, providing an insight into sociological trends. You could go even further and give some examples. So for example, you could talk about how children who are on free school meals tend to underachieve compared to their peers who aren't on free school meals, or you could do that by gender or by ethnic group as well. So what you've done is you've identified an advantage of official statistics and you've used your research to back up that point. So that's going to get you, this is how you develop your analysis through using an example. We'll go the other way now and we'll look at a disadvantage of official statistics. And what we have talked about here is that they can be manipulated. And as a result, an inaccurate picture may be presented. Now, this is a correct point. It's a great point if you had maybe a 2-mark question, a 4-mark question, and you had to outline 2. You don't get those on the full A level. You do get them on the AS. However, we're going to do the same thing again. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick out a piece of official statistics, a piece of research that uses official statistics that could potentially be manipulated. Can we think of any sociological research that uses official statistics that can be manipulated and why it might be manipulated?
Can I have a go again? As people have
You
been
certainly
quiet in the
can,
chat window. Well, I was thinking historically there have been issues with unemployment statistics. Governments have changed the way that they measure them in order to
what counts as
disguise.
unemployment.
Yeah.
And particularly when you look at the different definitions of what is employment, what don't take into account underemployment.
Yeah.
Study account, excellent. Study account is put here crime statistics focused on ethnic groups. I went more broad, but it's a really good example of how
It's a
you can
great
do
point.
it. I've gone quite broad with it, and I've looked at crime statistics as well, particularly police recorded crime. So let's reveal our second one. Oh, sorry, I've actually gone a little step further and talking about soft statistics and the difference between soft and hard statistics. So, for example, soft statistics are those which are kind of open to interpretation by the people who are compiling them, whereas hard statistics usually have a legal basis. So, an example of hard statistics is things like birth rates, marriages. These are the ones that legally have to be recorded. Soft statistics is an example, police recorded crime, which is based upon the subjective interpretation of a police officer as to whether a crime has been committed. Okay, and we've developed this point here, and then we move on to our next one. Because of pressure to reduce crimes, this could lead to officers being less likely to record a crime. So there may be less recorded crimes, less recorded for political reasons. There may be, their senior managers or whoever are involved wanting to present a picture of a falling crime. So therefore, they may manipulate it and they may change the ways in which these are recorded.
Great
And
stuff.
therefore it impacts on the validity. So this would be how you sort of like walk through kind of how you use a piece of evidence to back up a strength or a limitation of a particular research method. And we go over to Sarah. Oh no, it's still me. It's still me. Sorry. Now we evaluate it. Sorry, I thought it was Sarah next.
Let you have another one, Craig.
Yeah, now we can evaluate it. Now, the thing with evaluation as well, people always ask about evaluations as being quite difficult. We think of how do we evaluate a research method is quite difficult. Well, we kind of looked at it and so I thought, well, actually some very easy evaluations that you can make, particularly when you look at the opposites. So, for example, one piece of, quantitative methods, they may be high in reliability. However, because they tend to be quite superficial in what they record, they lack validity. They don't tell us why something has happened, they only tell us that it has. And there are lots of natural opposites in quantitative and qualitative methods that you can use to create some easy evaluation points. And we're going to look at a couple now. We're going to use our value wheel, and we're going to look at here strengths, criticisms, alternatives, limitations, and evidence. And just to kind of go back over this is the idea that an evaluation is a judgment, and the judgment doesn't always have to be a criticism. It can be that there is some value to this approach, that there is a strength to it. It can be also be an alternative. What might another group of sociologists say? And you'd be quite careful about that and linking in to making sure that you link in to the exact same topic. It could be a limitation. Well, what does it not explain? Or it could be a piece of evidence. It could be a piece of sociological evidence that you use to either reject or accept the point that has been made in the main body of your essay. So let's look at two examples here. First one, our student has put that quantitative methods are favoured by positivists as they adopt a more scientific approach to the study of society. That is a true and accurate statement. We've kind of what we've done is we've said yes, we've kind of paraphrased what a student would say in an essay, and now we want to evaluate that point. So how are we going to evaluate it? Let's spin our wheel. Are we going to come up with a strength, a criticism, an alternative, a limitation, or a piece of evidence to support that? We're going to go with an alternative. Okay, so what is an alternative view? That a quantitative method are favoured by positivists as they adopt a more scientific approach to a study society. So our easy evaluation is if positivists like it, who doesn't? Who might not like quantitative methods? If positivists like it, who dislikes it? Or who may dislike it? What are the opposites of positivists? So easy evaluation.
Shall we have a look?
Let's go. We have our interpretivists. However, interpretivists would suggest that quantitative methods do not provide researchers with the meaning behind an individual's actions. So you can see this is how one way in which sort of like we are getting this easy evaluation. Positivists say this. However, interpretivists disagree with the use of quantitative methods because they don't give us meaning. Okay, quite easy. Let's look at our next one. See if we get a criticism or an alternative again. Let's see. Spin. Quantitative methods provide researchers with the opportunity to generalize behavior to the broader population due to their scale. How can we criticize that argument? So we know this is correct. Quantitative methods do give researchers the opportunity to generalize behavior because they're large scale. How might we criticize the idea of generalizing people's behavior? Should we have a look?
Here we go.
Oh, Sophie's coming there with it's deterministic. Yeah, very, very, very good. Good response. It can be seen as being quite deterministic. I've gone with sociologists will suggest human behavior is not predictable. We can't generalize, and we shouldn't generalize. The behavior of some cannot be generalized to everybody else in the population. So, yeah,
Excellent stuff.
you can see there are very kind of easy evaluations that you can make. Obviously, add in a piece of research that backs up the first point that's made, and then come up with one of these easy evaluations, and you're looking really good for writing those. For the 20-mark essays,
Yes,
for
I was just going to say that. Don't do this in your 10 markers. You outline and explain 10 markers. So yeah,
I mean, you can do it. It just won't be credited.
yeah.
And
So
it
save your time. Save your time for your 20 marker. Yeah. So on 30 markers. So yeah, on those 10 mark outline and explain theory and methods questions, if you're asked for two reasons why positivists might use quantitative data or something like that, don't bother telling us why interpretivists wouldn't. That's not answering the question. But if you're doing an essay, you're evaluating the view, and that's what you've been asked to do, and so you'll go and look at other sides of the argument and things there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would have been helpful if I mentioned that at the start of the evaluation exercise, wouldn't it? Completely forgot about that. But hey, we got there in the end.
We did, absolutely. Here we go. Questionnaires. Questionnaires, Sarah.
So we thought it would be nice to do a bit of a focus on questionnaires as one of our key quantitative methods. And then we're going to move on to look at some key terms to finish off the session today. So questionnaires are a key quantitative research method. You'll be familiar with them. You may hear them referred to as surveys, but we mean the same thing. But it's a way of collecting structured data from large samples. And this is then useful for identifying patterns and trends. And it can be high reliability and generalizability, if you get a good response rate at least, due to their standardized format. However, questionnaires are criticised sometimes because they might lack validity, especially for sensitive topics. It can be hard to delve into a sensitive topic through a questionnaire, and respondents may not actually be as truthful as they would in person or in an interview where they built a relationship with the interviewer. And sometimes they may choose not to respond at all. So we could be looking at low response rates. We're going to look at a couple of examples where questionnaires have been used. You may well be familiar with these. They're very widely used examples. And I think these two are really nice because you can actually contrast them with each other because they both have a kind of different story to tell. So Connor and Dewson, I think this is a lovely one to revise because you can use it in education as well. And I think whenever you get that double whammy, it's really nice because it's worth learning if you can use it twice. So they distributed 4,000 questionnaires and they were looking at working class attitudes towards higher education, particularly to do with kind of finances. And they got a really good response rate. So they benefited from this very large and a very representative sample. The questionnaires went to several different universities. So it's seen as a really kind of robust example of questionnaires being very successful. In contrast, Sherry Hyatt in 1991 sent out, I think it was about 10,000 questionnaires. She sent them by post. And they were on domestic violence. And she actually only got 4% of them back. So that was quite a big outlay of kind of time and that investment there to only get 4% back. And that may have been a real indicator of how, when it's a sensitive topic, a questionnaire, we saw this with Venkatesh as well, who you may also have come across with Gang Leader for a Day, where trying to use a questionnaire may not be suitable. So the method you use does need to be suited to the topic that you want to investigate. So
Just,
the
I was
Go on,
just going. I was just thinking with that very low response rate. I'm just thinking back to where we started with the sampling, and if you know, you could put a researcher could have put all this effort into the sample, maybe using a stratified sample, a systematic sample, random sample, put a huge amount of effort into that sample. If they then get a very small self-selecting response rate, all that effort's gone. Really, you've got an unrepresentative sample. Even if 4% might be quite a lot, if they've sent out huge numbers of things, that might be quite a lot of responses.
Yeah.
You've no idea whether they reflect the sample that you originally started with. So it's a major problem, as well as the sort of ethical aspects of it. The
Sometimes that
representativeness.
response rate, it could be kind of, it might be all the middle class parents who filled out the questionnaire. So sometimes it can give you a really
Yeah, absolutely.
skewed representativeness as well. Yeah. So it's a real barrier for researchers, I think. It's difficult and a nice one to evaluate as well. So our last activity today is to revisit some of the really important key terms that you will need when you are writing these essays, whether they're a 10 marker or a 20 marker, about research methods. So this is a matching up exercise. So we have got 8 key terms for you, as you can see there, and we've got 8 definitions, but they are currently all muddled up. So your task is to match the letters with the numbers, and you have got 60 seconds of some excellent music to do that.
Oh, it's dramatic.
Yes. All you've got to put in the chat is A6. I'm not saying that's the answer, but choose the letter, choose the number, and put them together.
Yeah, don't feel you have to do all of them. If you spot one, do it.
Pick your favourite key term to match up. Okay, that's your 60 seconds. If you are watching this on replay, you might want to press pause now if you'd like a bit more time. We are going to have a look at those answers. So, how did you get on?
Sorry, we're revealing. Yes. Okay, here
Now
we
we
go.
reveal yes.
There we go.
There we go. So, we've got some lovely key terms. I think it's worth drawing attention to reliability. So C7 that turned out to be. When you talk about reliability, and it is something that I've been teaching for sociology for a long, long time, and students every year get confused between reliability and validity. But a really important thing with the reliability is that there are a load of key terms you can use within that term. So we've got a couple here: consistency, repeatability. You can also use replicability, uniformity, comparability. So there are all these lovely terms. And if you kind of see that as a list of things that help you talk about reliability, I think that can really help you not get it confused with validity. And then we've got objectivity, which of course some of these terms come up in other topics outside of research methods, like is sociology a science? You've got your surveys there, which really, we can use the term questionnaires interchangeably. Official statistics, which we've explored quite a lot today. And of course, generalizability, which takes us back again to thinking about sampling frames and our representativeness. So really nice list of key terms there that could easily be turned into revision flashcards as well.
Absolutely. Okay.
About to leave.
I pressed the wrong button. There you go. It was really slick there at the end. really,
I
really
thought
slick.
we were going to start all over
Yeah,
again.
start again. Press the wrong button on me thing. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. Really useful activities, really interesting, and thanks those of you got involved in the chat window. So that's particularly study accountant Sophie Dawn. Sorry if I've missed anyone. There might have been someone earlier as well. If you've enjoyed this, found it useful, please do click the thumbs up button. If you aren't already subscribed to Tutor, do so, because you'll find out about other videos, both from sociology and perhaps from your other subjects as well. We're not here next week because Craig and I are down in London doing some CPD, but in a couple of weeks' time we'll be back for some qualitative data and qualitative methods. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. And thanks very much, guys. Cheers, guys. See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.